Hello YouTubers, and today I'm going to be reviewing this, which is the RB Replica's War Doctor Sonic Screwdriver. So, I picked this up, if you've probably seen, because the video is probably out by now, from the Neil Cole Museum of Classic Sci-Fi, and it cost me £70, which is about half of how much you'd pay if you'd gotten RB to actually make you one, and that. So, yeah, and I have also polished this up, and I did a YouTube short about it, but I used some Brasso here to polish it up, and it is something I do recommend, you know, if you do have any replica sonic screwdrivers that have any marks on them or anything, to use Brasso and that to polish them up. I know there are other options than that out there, but Brasso is the most widely available and easy one to get. I mean, I picked one up from Tesco for £3.50, so yeah. But obviously, here it is, the War Doctor Sonic Screwdriver. Now, there is obviously one glaring thing to mention about this. This is not accurate. Technically, the character options toy is the most accurate because, well, it was a modified 4th Doctor Sonic Screwdriver that was used in the 50th anniversary special Day of the Doctor. So, yeah. So essentially, you know, something, well, not this, but like this, without the tape on it, is technically the most accurate, and that to the actual prop. But still, it is nice to, you know, see what it could have looked like if it was actually, you know, made out of metal. And you'd think this thing, you know, would just be them reusing their 4th Doctor parts, but it's not. It's actually... most of this is just completely unique to this screwdriver itself, because most of the RB Sonic screwdrivers and that, you know, just like in the show, are just basically reusing the same parts that they make, or making them to the exact same specification. This one isn't. This one is purely unique. So if we take a look at it at the bottom here, so we got the end section here, which does unscrew, and that this section unscrews and can come off. I'm not going to do that in this video, but you can see here, this section here, which is painted black, on their 3rd, 4th, and 5th Doctor Sonic screwdrivers, this is actually just, you know, open, like it should be. So you can see how they copied it here and copied its design, even the rounded parts and that here. And this section here is all nice and shiny. Well, it is now after being polished. But they've even, interesting here, what they've done is they've, rather than, you know, just making an indentation here, they've actually machined it down. So this is actually raised. So when you push your finger along here, it's actually raised up a little bit on here, because on the toy, that section is right here, and that is because that is 2 sections that essentially are glued together on the toy. So, yeah, but on this section here is all one piece. So they've basically done that to make it look like, you know, it's a separate piece, 2 separate pieces that go together. But on this one, it is all one piece. You got the little black detailing and that, and the LED at the end, which isn't actually, it is actually a red LED. But this features no lights and no sound effects. But it is spring-loaded, but it does have a problem. It constantly gets jammed. Now, believe it or not, this is not as bad as it was before. It was actually worse when I actually got it, and there is a reason this thing gets jammed, which I will show you right now, because I'm going to unscrew it. So here is the main rod itself that goes throughout the body, and you can also remove the LED itself. Now, on my one, there's pretty much no way to get at the legs of the LED. I don't know whether they're being snipped off or not, but I've seen other people's ones where basically the legs of the LED are sticking out. But yeah, basically modifying this to actually have electronics is extremely difficult. And the reason is basically there's not much room inside this sonic screwdriver, which is unfortunate. The bottom section then unscrews here, which is also really good. This is very good, you know, for cleaning it as well. So if we just unscrew that section there. And then the body slides out like this. And the problem with it constantly jamming is basically, you see this section here? On the 3rd, 4th and 5th Dr. Sonic screwdrivers, this section is much thicker. So the problem is, when it's inside here, it's basically tilting from side to side. It's not going completely straight, so it's very easily catching on the side bits here. Whereas if this section was a little bit thicker, like it is on those other Sonic screwdrivers, it wouldn't do that. Now, I must mention, this is clearly an earlier one in the production. I don't know how long Neil Cole has owned this Sonic screwdriver for. He couldn't remember. And I did also ask RB about it as well. He couldn't remember either. So, yeah, but it is an earlier one in his production line. So whether he's fixed, that issue with it, I don't know. But something I have done, this is not the original spring that came with it. This one is a replacement spring, because this is the spring that came with it. And as you can see, it is considerably bigger than the one I've put in it. Because a problem I've done this with most of RB's Sonic screwdrivers, where I have replaced the springs, because I find the springs in them are just too powerful. Basically, it's really hard to pull them down. Plus, this was making, on this particular one, it was making the Sonic screwdriver constantly jam. And it was really difficult to unjam. So that's essentially the reason why I replaced the spring and that on this one, because thankfully I did have some spares and that. In fact, I've still got a load of spares here. There you are. But yeah, that is something, I suggest people do if they do buy RB replica Sonic screwdrivers, is that you replace the spring. But this thing jams even without the spring, as I showed you just before. It does jam quite easily, and that in there. It does catch quite easily, so it is unfortunate that it does do that, which is a shame. But it is still a really nice replica. The problem is that obviously, without any electronics in it, it can't really be actually, used as a Sonic screwdriver and that. If you run a current through the LED, then you can do that, but I have no way of doing that because, as I said, the legs are being cut short, so there's no way for me to actually reach the contacts on the LED to do that. So, yeah, there's no way for me to solder any wires and that, or even do it that way. And even if I did, there's not really any room throughout the body and that of the Sonic screwdriver. The rod does take up quite a bit of space inside. I did experimenting with the rod, actually. I tried adding a little bit of extra thickness to the rod on the inside with some gaffer tape, just to see how much, room I could get in there, but yeah, it just, unfortunately, it doesn't give much room, basically, after 2 rounds of gaffer tape on there, so basically going around it twice, it really struggled to move at all, so you'd have to have wires, that were extremely thin, like ribbon wires, and even then they may still not fit, and even if they do, it's constantly rubbing against the metal, so it's more likely that the wires are going to strip. So yeah, I know there are some people who have managed to do it, but I think they've also seriously modified the Sonic quite a bit in order to do that as well, which is just something I'm not willing to do. If the rod that went through it was actually hollow and that, or had a gap for, a wire and that to go through, then it would have made it much easier to actually add some electronics to it. But since that rod itself is basically solid, there's not really a way to do it. It is hollow a bit at the top, if I just pull the rod out. So that end there, solid, but at this end, because it screws in a bit, you can see there's a hole at the top there. I'm not sure how far that actually goes down. But if we get a light, maybe we can see. Okay, I can just about see how far it goes down there. So it goes to roughly about here is where that goes down to. But if that continued all the way down to the bottom and there was a little hole at the bottom, that would be a way for, you know, someone to get electronics. Again, I don't know whether these changes and that have been made and that with the newer ones, but these are just things I'm suggesting and that off the top of my head. But regardless, I do still really like this sonic screwdriver regardless. And it is one that does complete, you know, the collection and that for me of RB sonic screwdrivers and that. But, as I said, I was put off for the fact that I knew, you know, it didn't have electronics in it. And I probably wouldn't be able to get electronics put in it anyway. So, yeah. For me, for most people, if you're going to get only one RB sonic screwdriver, I'd recommend either the 4th or 8th Dr. Sonic screwdriver. And as for this one, it is still really nice, even though obviously it's inaccurate to the prop. But, yeah, there's those few issues where it's getting jammed here, and also the LED at the end. But again, you know, maybe this is something, well, this is probably also something you could request from RB, because if you buy one and that is made to order for you, you can make some requests in that form. For example, I requested when he was doing my 8th Dr. Sonic screwdriver to have an extra head made that was the powder-coated one, and the other one being the anodized head. So it is something that you could do. Obviously, with this, you know, I bought it from a museum. It wasn't residing in the museum, just so you know. It was just in Neil Cole's personal collection. So, obviously, I didn't have that luxury in that. Though, admittedly, I did pay about half the price. I'm not sure. Don't quote me. I don't know how much they are currently. And that, I'm just going off, you know, when I was buying them. But, regardless, really like this sonic screwdriver. And, yeah, I do recommend it to people. But just be wary of its possible issues.